Cinesmack contains spoilers of the spoiling type. If you don't want your spoilers spoiled, please turn back now. Otherwise, enjoy the show!
Hello, Cinesmacketeers, and welcome back to the podcast about films by filmmakers. I am your host, Mike Keeler. Joining me, as usual, owner of Cheshire Moon Films, Mr. Tom Haggis.
Set your phasers to fun, bitches. I stole that from The Simpsons, so. Not the bitches part, that was me.
Oh. Also joining us is owner of One Genome Short Productions, Mr. Gabriel Rowald.
Can't top that. Can't top it.
Don't try.
Yeah, don't even try.
Not even going to try.
And owner of Outpost 515 Productions, Mr. Samuel Pace Twomey.
Good evening, everyone. Or day. Whatever time you listen to this wonderful podcast.
There you go. And our special guest this month, owner of K-Bot Films and a man that I've worked with a lot, Mr. Kent Abbott.
For those of you who speak Wookiee.
Nice. Well, thanks for joining us, Kent.
My pleasure. It's great to be here. I'm pumped because these are awesome movies. I feel like this is like the epitome of my life so far.
Well, once we decided about this, I was looking through possible guests, and your name shot at me like a cannon. I was like, "Yep, Kent's got to be on this one." So let me poke the monkey.
Ladies and gentlemen, Seti Alphians and Nerf herders, welcome to the main event. Tonight, two titans of the geek pantheon will clash in a war among the stars to see who will trek to victory. In the first quarter, from 1980, directed by Irvin Kershner, starring Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher. Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back! In the second quarter, from 1982, directed by Nicholas Meyer, starring William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, and Ricardo Montalban. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan!
I just have to say I'm glad I am not judging this one. I've said that a few times. I stand by it on this one. This is going to be difficult. At least it would be difficult for me because I love both of these films. So without further ado, let's move on to writing.
Well, look, I'm not a Star Wars apologist or anything, but I certainly like Star Wars a lot more than the Star Trek stuff. I don't really care for the Star Trek stuff, I'll be honest with you. I think arguing about which Star Trek film is the best is kind of like arguing about which One Direction member is the best. I mean, really, honestly, in the grand scheme of things, who cares? Collectively, it all kind of sucks. So that's where I'm coming from. So the stories on these two, first of all, I mean, Wrath of Khan, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward story. I mean, there's one plot that kind of drives through the whole thing. What's really great about Empire is that they take the characters that we know and love from New Hope, and rather than bringing them together and letting them continue their adventures, Lee Brackett and Lawrence Kasdan scatter them across the universe. Luke goes and does his thing and introduces us to Yoda. Han and Leia take their just knockout like 1930s screwball chemistry and go in a totally different direction. And it's such a great entertaining movie. And the way that the stories basically, to diverge and then clash back together in Cloud City. It's all so magnificently done, and it not only is it probably the best Star Wars film, but it is one of the best films I think that's ever been put out there. I mean, definitely a top 10. There's not a lot to find fault with this. Now, I do like Wrath of Khan. It's not it's one of the maybe 2 or 3 Star Trek movies that I enjoy, that I would like to sit down and watch over and over again. But a lot of that is Ricardo Montalban. It's so awesome in it. But I'm supposed to be talking about story. I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be talking about the writing. I think the part of the writing of Wrath of Khan that I found the most enjoyable was the kind of the banter between Kirk and Spock that that kind of took the human element of decision making, and I'm going to throw McCoy in there too, and this idea of compassion and rationalism and decisiveness, and it takes the 3 separations of intellect and splits them into these 3 persona, and they do such a great job of working through their problems, and you're able to see how we as individuals go through our problems, but instead it's personified in these 3 people, and you're actually able to see them working separately, which I thought was genius. And it's one of the reasons that Wrath of Khan is enjoys the popularity it does today after umpteen mediocre movies that have come out since.
Yeah, I think I think the writing in these 2 movies, each one has its strength, and I think for Wrath of Khan, it's character development. I think that's a strength, and I think that's a little bit of a weakness at times for Empire Strikes Back. But as far as kind of, I think we're all familiar with the idea that George Lucas kind of based the Star Wars movies and the whole kind of universe on kind of mythological ideas, kind of mythological storytelling that had been around for forever and ever. I believe it's Joseph Campbell who had written books about kind of the mythic story structure, and George Lucas took that, and I think that's the strength of Empire Strikes Back. I feel sometimes that the characters are a little bit shallow, but they all fit into these perfect places, into this mythic structure to create this great adventure that we're so enthralled with.
What? I think you're full of crap. Are you talking about Empire?
Yeah, I don't think
They're shallow?
Yeah, absolutely. At times.
Oh, it's on now.
Sure.
I love it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I couldn't disagree more. I think, and sometimes they're purposely vague. If you see them, I mean, yes, he did talk about Joseph Campbell and the character types, but he's in some ways letting you fill in some of those stories, giving you just enough details. In my opinion, Star Trek, there's 5 writing credits on that. Usually if you see more than 2 writing credits, something is not right, even if some are stories.
Yep.
But
those characters are more human to me. I can identify with the characters in Star Trek more than I can with the ones in Star Wars.
Sure,
but they're archetypes. They're not fully fleshed out characters, and that's what I'm saying.
You think?
But that's the
Star
beauty
Trek
of it.
Characters are more than the Star Wars ones.
Oh, absolutely.
What?
Yes, absolutely.
Check this paper.
Yes. No, really. Kirk is a more well-rounded character than any of the characters in Star Wars, and I love all the characters in Star Wars, but they all play archetypes. Luke is the young hero, and Han Solo is the cocky veteran, and Princess Leia is the vulnerable princess. They're all archetypes. There's no, and I don't know.
Captain Kirk is the brash captain. What's new about that?
Yeah, but especially in Wrath of Khan, he's contemplating his own mortality. He's doing more human things. He's a little bit more fleshed out than any of the. I mean, the big revelation in Empire Strikes Back is, Darth Vader is Luke's dad, and it's like, oh no, you can't be my dad. It's like it's part of the mythological structure that's almost predictable. I love. Don't get me wrong, because I love Star Wars, and I love almost the whole series. But like the first 3 that came out, I love those. And when I was a kid, it was best thing ever. But now, upon rewatching it, it's like, well, they're really not individuals. They're archetypes, and especially when it comes to the writing part of it, the love relationship between Han Solo and Leia is so awkward.
What? It
is awkward. It's terrible. it's absolutely
love
terrible.
stories start out awkward.
No.
It's so terrible.
Terrible.
Their dialogue is terrible.
No,
It
it's
is the most
not.
terrible stuff. The only good dialogue is when she says, "I love you," and Han Solo says, "I know." That is the only good dialogue between them, and that defines their characters more than any of that other trash.
And that
you know,
was
you're
improvised on
you're
set.
a scruffy nerf herder. You
Right.
cannot tell me that is shitty dialogue. That is shitty dialogue.
That's
That-
an
that-
and it
whole
doesn't-
scene- That whole scene where in the back and they're working on, I don't know what part of the ship they're working on, but when they're in the back working on the ship, that whole scene about I happen to like nice men, that was freaking seduction, man. It was so good. That was
I
a
don't
hot
know.
scene.
I felt like a lot of it was just really kind of, it was just so awkward to me.
I just
there,
have
there
to
were
say,
very few points where I felt like they weren't struggling to say these lines.
I just have to say, I would have kissed Han Solo at that point. I mean, no, I totally would have made out with him.
I wouldn't have kissed him until he said, "I know,"
Oh, I would have ripped my clothes off. Then.
but then it would have been too late. You would have ripped your clothes off. Okay, well, you're easy.
You would have
That's
been
what my
standing
wife
behind
says.
him. You would have been standing behind him like C-3PO holding onto your tool.
You know, I kind of have to agree. I'm trying to think of the character arcs that Leia, Han, Luke went through from beginning of Empire to the end, and I'm not seeing a change in those characters from beginning of the movie to the end. It might be because, you know, it suffers from the fact of being the center chapter in a trilogy,
Right.
but Kirk's arc throughout Wrath of Khan is much more pronounced in the fact that he starts off brash and cocky like Kirk always is, and is brought to his knees by Khan and has to deal with that fact. Spock, obviously, too, has to come to terms with the fact that he's going to have to make a sacrifice in order to save the ship.
If you're going to be fair, you need to compare Kirk's arc to Luke's and Spock and McCoy's to. Spock and McCoy didn't have much of an arc. Then they're, lower primary characters. I mean, the two protagonists, and Luke goes through a pretty big change from, cocky pilot on Hoth to, one-armed, infirmary resident. So I think, he goes through a pretty big change too.
Yeah, but I don't think that change is fully realized until Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, it's kind of almost at the denouement where he goes through that change.
Yeah, he
But
does.
that's the fact of
He
him
does kind
not
of go through this
completing his Jedi
cocky.
training.
I'm sorry, what was that?
But that's kind of a fact of him not completing his Jedi training as well,
Right.
which he finishes in the third film.
Right.
And kudos to them for taking a movie and ending it on such a down note and just, telling everybody, get the fuck out of the theater, go home and cry about it for 3 years. We'll get back to you.
Exactly.
Right? That's what life is, a series of down endings.
And so
Thank you.
they were so ahead of their time.
All Wrath
movies.
Khan had was a bunch of Muppets.
Wait.
Okay, works close enough.
But yeah, all the movies are doing that now. I mean, especially the ones that are splitting up their final chapters into two movies.
Oh, yeah.
They're all ending their movies on down notes now, and it's so hip and cool. But Empire was there first. No one had ever done that, I don't think, before that.
Well, and originally, I believe Star Trek II was supposed to end on a down note, but with the test screenings, everyone they changed the ending. Spock was not supposed to come back at all.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
They
just
added
hinted
on
it.
that shot of his casket on the Genesis planet
Yep.
Right.
later on in order to kind of give it that ambiguity.
That's because Trekkies are emotionally distable.
They did a similar thing to one of my favorite movies too, with Blade Runner, where it ended on a down note, and then they added footage actually from another film altogether at the end to kind of.
They added footage to. Oh.
Was that the fourth
I
version
thought we
or
were
the
all
fifth
supposed to-
version?
Yeah, no, that was the first version.
It's when they're driving in the car, correct?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of like they're doing something at the end, and it's the only time in the movie where you see like sunlight and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, I don't know, you never know how long she might live, and so it might be okay. Instead of at the end where you're like, oh, well, she's not going to live very long, and he's probably a replicant too, and he might not live very long. So yeah, no, I think that happens a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To hell with test audiences.
Yeah, studio heads paying too much attention to test audiences, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, let's put it to a vote. Tom.
Okay, Star Wars.
Gabe.
Okay, I said a lot about the characters, and I was just trying to say that there was a difference between the two. But I enjoy overall the writing of Star Wars very much. Believe it or not, that's going to be my vote, Star Wars.
All right. Sam.
Star Wars.
And Kent.
I am going to go Khan with this one. I love the writing a lot better in Khan.
All right. After the lackluster critical and commercial response to the motion picture, series creator Gene Roddenberry was forced out of the sequel's production. Executive producer Harvey Bennett wrote the film's original outline, which Jack B. Sowards developed into a full script. Director Nicholas Meyer completed the final script in 12 days without accepting a writing credit. Meyer's approach evoked the swashbuckling atmosphere of the original series. And when Han Solo is about to be frozen, Princess Leia says, as we all know, and Gabe already Tom, one of you already stated, "I love you." In the original script, Han Solo was supposed to say, "Just remember that, Leia, because I'll be back." So he had a Terminator line. But at the time of filming, Harrison Ford...
I'll be back.
At the time of filming, Harrison Ford wasn't entirely certain he did want to come back for a third film. There's a recurring legend that his line, "I know," was ad-libbed. However, Alan Arnold's book, Once Upon a Galaxy, a journal in the making of The Empire Strikes Back, includes a transcription of the discussion between Ford and Irving Kershner in which Ford suggested the line.
Yeah, I think I know what I read about it was Kershner would do a lot of the story committees, and a lot of that stuff came from Kershner on set. He was highly improvisational on set, and he added so much on set to that movie that kind of makes it what it is.
All right. Let's move on to acting.
Acting is interesting in these movies to me. I feel like George Lucas. I think one of the benefits to Empire Strikes Back is George Lucas did not direct, which I think helped improve the acting overall. But I feel like the strongest performances in Empire Strikes Back come out of Harrison Ford, and maybe some of the voice performances, like Darth Vader. His like physical performance isn't necessarily all that important, but his voice performance is pretty important. And Yoda.
Yeah, don't forget Frank Oz.
Yeah, and I think while when you hear Yoda for the first time, you can kind of you get hints of other kind of Muppet characters, but it's still unique enough and interesting enough that I think that's one of the most important performances in Empire Strikes Back. I'm not sure that Luke and Leia are all that strong of performances. There's a lot of secondary characters that kind of have single lines and they seem almost kind of stilted. I'm not sure that most of the performances overall are that great, but I would definitely point to those three, to Han Solo, to Darth Vader, and to Yoda in Empire Strikes Back. Wrath of Khan, I was actually a little bit surprised. I hadn't seen Wrath of Khan for a long time, and actually I was very surprised by both of these movies, how good they are, and how much I enjoyed them upon rewatching, even now. That they aged relatively well. And with Wrath of Khan, I was actually kind of surprised that William Shatner's performance was better than I expected it to be. It was a little more nuanced than I expected it to be. Because we've got this kind of stereotypical kind of William Shatner kind of talk. With the long pauses and that kind of thing. But I felt his performance was better, especially in the more thoughtful moments when like we talked about earlier, where he's kind of thinking about his mortality and that kind of thing. One performance I was slightly disappointed with at the end, and maybe it's just me. At the end, when Spock is dying from the radiation, I was not super impressed with Leonard Nimoy's performance there. But then again, maybe that's just Spock. Maybe that's just his character. I don't know. And you know the rest of the characters in Wrath of Khan. Oh, well, we can't stop without talking about Ricardo Montalban. I felt like his performance was really over the top, but it was very perfect at the same time. It was totally perfect. That his over the top performance totally worked for that, and he was awesome in my opinion. But what are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, Leonard Nimoy does have a tough road to hoe because a lot of acting is emotion. A lot of acting is exhibiting emotion, and Vulcans obviously don't do that.
Right.
So it's kind of like, he's got to act with a mask on almost. So you've got to kind of hear it in his voice and stuff like that. I think he did a nice thing with his voice in that scene where he kind of made it all gravelly.
Gravelly, yeah, he did.
And but yeah, he's got a tough one. But yeah, Montalban, come on.
Yeah, he was pretty fun.
I think Ken makes a good point about Nimoy's performance, is that I think it is more Spock than his lack of giving that performance. I think Leonard Nimoy, by that point, was really figured out the Spock character. And to me, it takes more for the actor to kind of hold back like that. Because, like Ken said, showing emotion is the easy thing for the actors to do, for the audience to pick up on. But like tamping it down and making that realistic within the context of the character, I think is actually pretty challenging. So in some ways, I thought that was pretty important. I thought Walter Koenig, all the actors in both of these films, we're going to say this a million times, that we love these films, we grew up on these films. Mm-hmm. I love the Star Trek cast, I really do. And when I was watching these films as a child, I think back to that too. How did the Star Wars universe overtake me much faster than Star Trek? I didn't watch that Star Trek, the movies, that much when I was younger. Saw them only a few times. And even now when I watch them, there's something different about them, the two feel of the universes. But to me, the acting, it's really tough because the ensemble in Star Trek, in some ways, I think have some more options. I mean, because of the vastness of their characters, they have more places to go as actors. In some ways, that speaks to Gabe's, talk of, some of the characters in the writing anyway, that, we don't see that much complex emotions in Star Wars as much as we do in Star Trek, possibly. What do you think, Tom? I
don't know. I thought that, like I said, I thought Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher had amazing chemistry in Star Wars. Wrath of Khan was one of those movies we had on beta that we watched a lot, and so I'm really familiar with it. It's one of the movies I've seen. It was one of the first movies I saw that really introduced me to science fiction movies, and I really enjoyed it. And then Search for Spock came out, and I was like, oh, they're all the same. And I thought, and I tried to go in with an open mind. It was like, I used to like this movie, so I'm gonna give it a really good shot. And the William Shatner, the way people make fun of him with his pause speaking, really aren't exaggerating it that much. It's a problem. It's a problem when a timer is going, when there's an element of time of plot point that you're like, hey, we have 2 minutes before this happens, and the captain is taking a moment for dramatic pauses. And I'm like, dude, you just wasted like 4 seconds just for that dramatic pause. We needed those 4 seconds. Could you just speak a little bit faster, please? Because the ship is about to blow up. And as the scenes got more dramatic and more tense, he seemed to do it more and more. And I was like, I was waiting for like cutaways of the other cast members kind of looking at each other like during the pauses. But it's I feel bad. It's such an easy thing to make fun of. It's like, J.J. Abrams and his lens flares. It's not nothing intentional. It's really supposed to be a stylish choice to help us enjoy the movie more, and it's kind of become, an exaggeration unto itself, and it's not really fair. But I find that there are so many great characters in Star Wars in the writing, and I believe all the actors do a really great job of bringing them all out. Mark Hamill's a lot less whiny in Empire than he was in the first one. And Harrison Ford is, and if it's possible, he's more of just a scoundrel. And I really love the way that he's focused on the task at hand, to escape the Empire and get to where they're going. But at the same time, he has time to pursue Leia as well, and it's so much fun. And like I said, watching the two of them in their section of the movie, it is like this 1940s screwball comedy. Like Bringing Up Baby or something. The way that they just goad each other, and I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. So.
Yeah, I love the scene in the medical hold after Luke's been injured between all the primaries with Leia and Han and Luke and 3PO and Chewbacca. That was so much fun. They were having so much fun doing all that stuff. That's when a lot of the pull the ears off the Gundark and Nerf Herder and all that stuff comes out.
Laugh it up,
I love
fuzzball.
that. Laugh it up, fuzzball. Oh my god, that may be my favorite line in the whole movie. I remember being a little kid hearing that and just guffawing at that line. But can we address the performance given by John Ratzenberger?
Oh yeah,
Who is it? One of the rebel officers?
yeah.
So what? Really?
Yeah.
John Ratzenberger is in this movie.
Cliff
In the
Clavin.
Hoth scene.
All right, everybody, stations, let's go.
Hilarious. And he even has a line, but I think they ADR'd it because he's not exactly like talking like Cliffy Clavin.
Oh, wow.
No, it's him.
I don't know if I saw him or not.
Yeah, go back
I-
and look at it.
Oh man.
Right before Leia, he's like, "Everybody, to your stations, let's go."
Yep.
It's not. It's his audio.
But I want to address also there were really 3 really great performances given in Khan. At least 3 great performances given in Khan by hairpieces. Some great hairpieces in that movie that I thought really were pulling a lot of the load in that film. But seriously, I actually thought a lot of the stuff between Kirk and Bones was really great. The relaxed atmosphere between those two guys was really cool. And I do agree that Ricardo Montalban did really dig into that villain role, and he had some great lines in there where he was talking about chasing Kirk around the moons of Nebula and the Perdition's flame and all that stuff. I think he really dug into that pretty good, and it may have been a little bit B-movie-ish, but I think the part called for it.
Oh
Yeah.
well,
Go ahead.
I think it goes back to the writing, though. I mean, they put a lot of odes to literature in there, and I think Ricardo Montalban, being the actor, that he was, I think, just dug into that, and I think Shatner. I think that brought out some great stuff in Shatner as well. Just being able to look at those pieces and using that, there was still the dramatic pauses, as Tom said, but. I think that just added more to their performance.
I'm not gonna discredit Ricardo Montalban's participation in this movie at all. I think had you had a lesser actor in there, that it could have drifted very easily into kind of hokey territory.
Oh, yeah.
And the future of the entire Star Trek franchise rested on this movie. And I don't sit up at night wondering what would happen if a different actor had been in there. I'm sure some Star Trek fans do, but I gotta wonder if they had someone else in there, where would that franchise be today? It could have just been a handful of movies and, tossed in the dustbin of sci-fi history. So,
Right.
stay awake tonight.
All right, let's put it to a vote. Gabe.
Oh boy. Performances. I think I have to go with Wrath of Khan on this one.
All right. Kent.
I am gonna go with Empire on this. I thought that the performances in Empire, I think those are 2.5 really world-class actors there. And Khan, I think Nimoy and Kirk are good, but essentially it's TV actors almost who have been elevated. So I got to go with Empire on this one.
All right, Sam.
Empire.
Tom.
Star Wars Episode 5: The Empire Strikes Back.
All right. I put you down for Star Trek. You guys mentioned Luke being less whiny. Yeah, I noticed that. I noticed things more than when I was a teenager watching these movies over and over and over. But he still was whiny.
Especially when he was with Yoda. First.
For me, I don't know if you guys know this, but my wife knows it since every time he shows up on screen, I start cursing at the screen. She was a huge Friends fanatic, and I cannot stand Ross. I do not like David Schwimmer because of it. And to me anymore, watching the original Star Wars, Mark Hamill's Luke Skywalker starts to get into Ross territory for me. And I don't like feeling that way, but watching Empire, I still kind of got a little bit of it. And I understand he's young, he's naive, he hasn't been through the training, but he's still got a little bit of that Ross effect going on for me.
He does,
and
he
I
does
think
have
that's
a good
just,
line going.
Yes, and that's just how the character's written. Nothing against Mark Hamill.
But I do think Mark Hamill really brought it home on the weather vane when he's confronted with his heritage. I think that was very strong by Mark Hamill when he was confronted by Vader and resist the temptation. I thought that was some of his best work.
I agree. All right. Carrie Fisher stood on a box for many of her scenes with Harrison Ford in order to make up for the height difference and have her appear in the frame with him. Carrie Fisher was 5 foot, and someone's typing, and Harrison Ford is 6'1". I have two for Star Trek because one of them I got to talk about because Tom brought it up, and then the other one I thought was pretty damn good. According to Nicholas Meyer in the DVD commentary, in the moment when Kirk and Spock use the prefix code to sabotage the Reliant, William Shatner kept overacting the line, "Here it comes, now." According to Meyer, Shatner kept overselling the line, making it too obvious what was about to happen. Meyer kept doing the scene over and over again until Shatner got bored and he finally relaxed enough to say the line more casually. And it has been widely debated that Ricardo Montalban's chest was actually a prosthetic piece that he wore during the film. In the director's commentary in the special edition, Nicholas Meyer is quoted as saying that it was, in fact, Montalban's actual chest and that he was a very muscular man who worked out. During publicity for the movie and during an appearance on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, Montalban explained that he was able to achieve the look seen in the film by doing push-ups. A lot of push-ups. I had always been told that it was a prosthetic as well, so
I'm not sure whether to believe that it was his real chest, even hearing the director say that or not.
Yeah.
He is cut in that movie. That's so ridiculous.
He is. All right, let's move on to directing.
Well, I think when you look at directing for both of these films, we've already kind of alluded to the work of one of these directors more than the other, which would be Irvin Kershner. And I think the very deft hand that he had with The Empire Strikes Back is why we remember it as probably the best Star Wars film. I think many people would argue that it is the best Star Wars film that's ever been made. And some of that simply was being able to escape the scope of the project itself. Yes, Star Trek II at that point was do or die for the franchise. But when we get to Empire, on that side, the pressures to bring home a film that topped Star Wars, I think were, this thing was either going to be really big or it was going to be a horrible failure. And I think because of the director's ability to kind of open up the cast and crew in some ways more, to tune them in more to the characters as opposed to just the specific apparatus of their storyline, which I think George Lucas was very good at creating. But I think Irvin Kershner was able to make them more self-actualized within their characters and made them feel, I don't know, you could see, to me, they felt more comfortable in their characters than they did in the original film. I don't know if that makes much sense, but watching it again, it's really nice to see them inhabit these characters and know that they had the space and the freedom to perform, and to be able to bring together a circus like this that was The Empire Strikes Back with the money, the labor, the timeline. I really think, and there's a lot of great work in The Wrath of Khan. I mean, it was equally. It saved the franchise. It really helped win over a new series of fans. But to me, in directing, it's Empire all the way.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I was really surprised upon rewatching both of these movies. Actually, I expected them to feel kind of dated, especially when it came to things like visual effects and that kind of stuff. But I was very happily surprised. I enjoyed them both very much, and I would probably go to the theaters and watch both of these movies again today. One of the things that I noticed for the directing of both of these movies, but especially for Empire Strikes Back, is the pacing.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a down moment in Empire Strikes Back. There's rarely a moment where you're like, okay, this is dragging on.
Yeah.
It's the pacing is really stellar, and it goes back and forth between these different. One of the things that could have been problematic for Empire Strikes Back is all these varying storylines that are happening everywhere around the Star Wars universe, but it jumps back and forth between them quite deftly and is really kind of it works. It just really works, and the transitions are good, and you just never feel like there's any downtime. And I also expected, when I was going to watch these, these are going to be about an hour and a half each, Well, Star Wars is over 2 hours, but it doesn't feel like it, And to me, that's one of the greatest accomplishments of the directing of both of these is the pacing. Even Wrath of Khan, there may be a few down moments, but it kind of gets into it and it goes, and you're not really sitting waiting for things to happen, and I think that's one of the greatest accomplishments for both of these.
Yeah, I definitely made a note about the pacing on Empire. I made a note because it starts out with the Hoth sequence, and I figure, Hoth is maybe about 20 minutes. It was 36 minutes. I didn't realize it was
really?
that long, but it seems like it goes by so quick because there's so much going on. I mean, that's a big chunk of time, 36 minutes, and it seems like it snaps right by. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing really throughout the movie. I think Kirshner is... I agree that he's really a big part of the success of that movie because Lucas stepped back. He was wise enough to step back and kind of give him free reign because he had enough with directing, because when he directs, he gets so into it that he let Kirshner do what he wanted. And I think Kirshner brought a lot to the set, like I've said before in this podcast. There's a few of the things that I know that stood out to me that are attributed to him are like with the line he was in on the line with I love you, I know. He came up with the idea of C-3PO coming in and interrupting Han and Leia's kiss on the Millennium Falcon, which I thought was a great moment. R2-D2 up on his tiptoes looking into Yoda's house was Kirshner. And one thing that I really loved about him was the sequence where the doors were closing on Hoth and Luke was still outside. That was so powerful. And it was all him, that small push in on Leia's face and Chewie's plaintive wail. Kirshner told him to do that. I think he's really kind of the MVP. But I do have to say, on the other hand, Khan was equally well directed. Two directors really took these movies by the reins and took them over. Nick Meyer, of course, we should note, graduated from the University of Iowa in literature and film. So he's an Iowa graduate, and he really came in and really didn't have any qualms about tossing aside anything from the Star Trek world that really didn't work and didn't make sense. And I thought that was really important that he was able to do that and make a good movie rather than make a good Star Trek movie.
Y'all are freaking crazy. I'm sorry, but I think both of these films were set up. I think more credit needs to go to the writers and the editors. I felt like the directors were both kind of middlemen, and I mean, I obviously, Kirshner, some of his choices were good, but I think that there was inherent success ready to go in both of these movies, on the printed page, and I believe that that it was more on the editor's job of putting the story together in a way that moved him. You guys are talking about the pacing of Empire, and that's more attributed to the editing than the director himself. I mean, the directors, they're moving the dialogue along, sure, and getting the dialogue to move quicker. But I mean, the editor can set the pace of the film more than the director does.
Right, but how do we know that distinction there? Because I mean, it's my understanding that directors and editors work pretty closely together.
Yeah, and Lucas did quite a bit of the editing actually himself on Empire.
Correct.
A rough cut. I'll say a rough cut. He didn't do the final cut, but he did do a rough cut of that.
Right. And I think it was those finer edits that Paul Hirsch put together that I consider Paul Hirsch the hero of the Star Wars, the original trilogy, because I think it was his work on Empire that helped make it such an engaging story and so entertaining and move like gangbusters. I mean, it's not a movie you can put in and it's like, oh, I got an hour to kill, I'll watch some of Empire. You can't do that because you get into it and it pulls you and drags you along. And I'm not saying that the directors didn't contribute anything, but I think that there is more to be said in this. This is a case where we can credit the editors more, if not as much as the directors. So, and with the credit that I gave Empire for the script, I think that William Dornch for his work on Wrath of Khan and Nick Myers, I think that their work on Wrath of Khan, they did more with less, and I felt like they actually were able to piece together a pretty entertaining movie, because I didn't find the directing for Khan all that interesting. So,
but what's interesting is the way in some ways that the cast and crew respond to the direction. If you listen to a lot of the Star Wars cast and crew talking about directions in the original trilogy series, almost all of them seem to have the most fond memories and the most what they credit as the most open kind of working atmosphere is when they had Irvin Kershner there. I don't think he's insignificant in the mix. I think if any of the Star Wars trilogy's directors were insignificant, would be Richard Marquand for Return of the Jedi, and that would be on a whole different podcast. But I think you're kind of selling some of Irvin's work short there, Tom.
Well,
smack it up a little bit.
That's fine. Smack away. The thing that I find interesting is that you go through and you look at these two directors and their catalog of film, and these are the two films that stand out for each of them. I mean, it's not like they have a long, glorious history. Nobody's talking about the Eyes of Laura Mars. I mean, it's, but when you go and you start looking at Paul Hirsch's work, Ferris Bueller Days Off, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Mission Impossible, Source Code, Mission Impossible 4. I mean, these are hard-hitting, fast movies that pull you in and take you along on a great ride. And I think when you look at Irvin Kershner's films, I mean, it's Empire, and then it's nothing else. So, by that rationale and extrapolating that, I think that what you're looking at is, I think the editor is where the talent lies behind the scenes on this movie. So, and less so for on Khan. So.
Well, I do think there's the adage that the movie is made 3 times: once on the page, once on set, and once in the edit room. And I think all 3 of those were very good with Empire. I do think it started with a good script, but I do have to disagree. I have to smack it up and disagree that Empire, that Kershner brought so much on set that, and plus they were also doing a lot of story conferences and stuff, changing the script. I don't think it had as much to do with the script. I will give you the editing point, though. Editing is a very powerful tool, and it was done well with Empire and really helped that move along quickly. I
roll my eyes when Star Wars fans go all about Irvin Kershner, because his name's the name at the bottom of the movie poster. But I think that you're doing a disservice for the other people behind the scenes of the movie that contributed, I think, in a bigger way to what we eventually wind up seeing nowadays. And that's why I think that, I mean, I feel like I'm an editor first, and this is a very, when people ask me the difference between, how do you tell the difference between direction and editing, I was like, Empire Strikes Back. That is where the editor, I think, contributed more than to the director. And again, Irvin Kershner had some really great shots. The part where Luke takes off from Dagobah, and they're kind of implying about Leia. I absolutely. It gives me chills every time I watch it. When Luke takes off and the whole swamp goes dark, and then there's the red jets on Yoda's face when there's this glimmer of hope, and it's this really awesome way to use lighting and cinematography to help drive the story home. And there's suddenly this little bit of light on Yoda's face that there's a little bit more hope than we think there is. That is really great direction. But I just don't. I think Kershner gets way more credit than he honestly deserves. So God rest his soul.
Now I want to say real quick, both of these films have two of my favorite space battles. Could you call it space? I guess space scenes would be more appropriate. Number one is the asteroid field. I love that sequence, and apparently there's a shoe in it and also a potato.
But, as asteroids?
Yes, as asteroids. And I don't know how many times I used to watch just that scene. I love the music. I love the direction. Of course, the effects. I just love everything about it. And I also love the editing. Tom brings up a good point about how a lot of Empire is edited very well. And my other one is the battle in the Mutara Nebula. I love the look of that. I love how Kirk goes 3D where Khan's kind of stuck on a 2D type plane. And that's owed a lot to, I believe, Run Silent, Run Deep, which was actually a basis for a Star Trek episode. I forget the name of it, but I really enjoy both of those. And I think they were directed well. And are you going to say that it was the visual effects guys? Yeah, a lot of it probably was. But I love how those two scenes come together. And with that, since I killed the conversation, let's move right into our voting. Sam.
Empire.
I already had you marked down. Tom.
Wrath of Khan.
Gabe.
I think it's pretty close, but I think I'm going to go with Empire.
And Kent.
I do think it's pretty close, but I too am going with Empire.
All right. I've been trying to search for trivia about the directors, so I'm just going to go through what they directed since we talked about it. Starting with Irvin Kershner, we're going to start at the top and work our way down. So the last thing that he directed was in 93. Sequest 2032, RoboCop 2 was that, and I enjoy RoboCop 2. Traveling Man, Amazing Stories, Never Say Never Again, Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Eyes of Laura Mars, Raid on Entebbe, The Return of a Man Called Horse, Spies, Up the Sandbox, that sounds dirty, Loving, the film, The Flim Flam Man, A Fine Madness, The Luck of Ginger Coffee, Face in the Rain, Craft, Suspense Theater, Naked City, Ben Casey. So a lot of TV stuff. Nicholas Meyer has only 10 credits compared to Kershner's 26. Directing, start top again, Love Affair, Vendetta, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, Company Business, The Deceivers, Volunteers, Fairy Tale Theater, The Day After, Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan, and Time After Time. So he too has done a lot of TV as well. And I wanted to point out too that Star Trek II was originally going to be called The Undiscovered Country. That was one of the working titles for it. And they settled on Wrath of Khan. So let's move on to our last and final round overall.
See, we're talking about effects in this section. I think these two movies are both very effects heavy. But I think one thing I want to note is, are we talking about the effects in Empire from the original theatrical cut, which I did watch on VHS?
Same here.
Or the the remastered version, because there's quite a difference.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, Kent. I made it a point to drag my VCR down from the attic, and I actually watched my VHS copy. I guess it depends. Maybe if you're talking about it, say if you watch the remastered editions or not. Mm-hmm. But let's just go with the originals.
Yeah, because it is kind of hard to compare the two, since one has basically, effects from 2000s and one has it from the early 80s. But I think the interesting is that both movies had their effects done by the same house, which is Industrial Light and Magic. And I think they're both really pretty good for the time. You mentioned, Mike, the Nebula fight sequence, and that was just beautiful. Mm-hmm. The way they did that, and it was just, they had colored dyes in water and would swish that around to make the nebula. And I thought that was very beautiful. And I think all of the ships, all the great miniatures in both of these films, but, those shots of the Star Destroyers are just awesome, and they always have been ever since the first Star Wars movie, But, I gotta say, there's some really janky stop motion in Empire Strikes Back that really kind of catches your eye. The tauntauns are a little janky. I think it works definitely better with the AT-AT walkers because they're mechanical and it kind of lends itself to that. But I think I do have to mention the SETI eels, the little earwigs that they put into Chekhov's ear and Paul Winfield's ear. Those things scared the ever-loving piss out of me when I was little and watching this movie. And they still pretty much work.
Yeah.
The little small slimy ones. Yeah.
Yep. And so, just real quick, they did that with a large ear, fake ear. And I guess the prop department, after making the ear, the film crew was to arrive the next day. And when they arrived, they found an equally large Q-tip for it.
I do think the large, oversized ear does itself look a little sketchy.
Yes, it does.
But the eels look awesome. They're so slimy and they crawl in. I thought that was very suspenseful, and that scene stuck with me as a kid.
If they did that movie now, they could get the same effect with the Meghan Trainor song.
Wow. Wow.
Like it would destroy your cerebral cortex and make you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. It makes you kneel down and grab your head in agony, and you can't get it out.
Right.
You can't get it out. You can't get it down.
And eventually
I'll do whatever you want. Just make it stop.
Exactly.
Yeah, and eventually you turn a phaser up to disintegrate and you shoot yourself.
Right. I wish I had a phaser. Yeah. Well, I think I watched. I'll have to go back and look. I watched a DVD version of Star Wars because that's what I own.
It's probably the remastered.
It probably is remastered. But I think you still have to say at the time, the Star Wars movies were kind of setting the bar as far as visual effects.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as maybe kind of chintzy as they may look to us now at times, you have to give them a lot of credit for what they accomplished. My girlfriend was watching Empire Strikes Back with me, and I was saying, none of this was done with a computer. This is all, compositing. They had little models that they, filmed, and then they composited over pictures of other little models, and then, so, and I think the same goes for both films. And you have to give them a lot of credit for what they accomplished with what they had, with the technology that was available to them at the time. And I think, and I don't know, Mike, maybe I'm going to steal your trivia. Were you going to talk about the computer-generated thing?
No, go ahead. It's actually on my list, but I'll let you do it because I have another awesome piece of trivia.
Okay, cool. Well, one of the pieces of trivia about Wrath of Khan is that there's a sequence where they're doing kind of a demo of the Genesis machine, and they showed a planet being kind of, brought to life by the Genesis machine, and supposedly that's the first time that there was an entire sequence done with a computer in filmmaking history. So I think it's really remarkable what they accomplished, and sometimes, frankly, I think I prefer some of the practical stuff. Mm-hmm.
I definitely agree with that.
I
kind of like Yoda as a puppet. Because I felt like he was more believable than the CGI Yoda later on, and I kind of like seeing the little Millennium Falcon models or the Star Destroyer models, those kinds of things. I kind of like that. There's just something.
I agree. I think you're right on. Yeah. That's why I think J.J. Abrams is going back to more practical effects as opposed to full.
Thank God.
Yeah. There's something to be said about being in a real set and what that for the performance and also visually when you capture it. You're absolutely right. I'm saying the same thing about Yoda. Like I couldn't stop thinking about, even though he's a puppet and low tech in this one, how much more he seems alive than any of the crappy prequels. Even when they had that, especially in Phantom Menace, when they had that like they did half puppet.
Oh,
half CGI.
Yeah.
Horrible.
And you're like, oh my God, Yoda had a stroke.
Yeah.
How did Yoda regress into episode 1? Because that puppetry was awful.
It was really, really bad. And so, I mean, you still had Frank Oz's voice, but not Frank Oz puppet. And it was obvious that it was,
I've got to say something. I think the capture technology has changed so much. I mean, you're talking about, HD cameras and better film stock. Well, did Lucas shoot that on? I don't know if episode 1 was all on film. I
thought it was the first digitally shot film.
Yeah, you may be correct. Yep. So I think it's just, I think it's just from going from film to digital, and I think that makes a difference. You're using better lenses, you're using better equipment to capture something, and of course it's going to look off. But I agree, he looked awful in episode 1.
It was really bad.
It was
capture, but the puppet looked awful and the performance awful. I think that goes back to how we should. I don't know if we did bring up Frank Oz in acting, but I mean
a little bit.
A performance. We talked about Spock acting through volcanism. Frank Oz acting through a puppet was amazing.
Jim Henson was originally asked to do the part of Yoda, and he declined it and gave it to Frank Oz. And Lucas loved the fact that how well Oz did with Yoda. He actually spent thousands of dollars campaigning to have him put on the ballot for the Oscars.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Genius that was, yes.
So go ahead, guys. Keep talking about effects. I want to bring up music after you're done.
Well, I was going to say, music's something we definitely have to talk about. I think as good as serviceable, I think, as the music is in Star Trek 2.
Oh,
you can't match John Williams.
Yeah,
you can't Imperial March.
Match the Imperial March exactly.
No, I'm not going to disagree that John Williams is great, but I think James Horner's score is
it's good,
great. I mean, I think both. I have both soundtracks on my iPod, and I hear from both films probably on a daily basis. But yeah, the Imperial March, you can't beat it. Like I said earlier, the asteroid field, I love that section, and there's actually a song for the asteroid field. And but I love Star Trek music as well. I think it's great. You brought up the emotion, Tom, about when Luke leaves Dagobah. Mm-hmm. I don't care who you are, but Amazing Grace, if you hear it on bagpipes, you're going to start to tear up. And I think that worked really well in the Star Trek movie. And that was James Doohan's idea. He actually brought his bagpipes. They didn't record it.
Did he actually play that?
It was actually recorded by not a composer, but someone else. But that was Scotty's idea to play the bagpipe, the actor's idea to play the bagpipes for it. And I tear up at that scene every time. I tear up at that, and I still am in awe when Vader tells Luke that he's his father.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
Both those still hit me, and I think that's music. Music adds a lot of emotion to both of those scenes.
Sure. Well, absolutely. And Star Wars from the very beginning, George Lucas brought back that big orchestral sound to help pull the. To push his stories and to make it that much more cinematic. And I think Empire is the logical extension of that. In some ways, it goes above and beyond. Empire goes above and beyond in so many ways. In the overall category, I think it's appropriate to talk about this. Whereas Star Trek II is very good at, doing a great story. You get expansion of characters. It does a good job, and it's a good film. But I think The Empire Strikes Back goes beyond that. It blows the trilogy wide open and takes it from the smaller, really nice, action-packed story to, setting to giving us all different levels of these characters. And, Kent talked about it earlier, and actually I think Gabe did too, about the down notes and how unheard of it was at this point to have such a huge movie end with the characters so beaten. But I think that's the beauty of Empire. And to me, they're both great films. But when you put it in music, costuming, we haven't even talked about costuming. I think that Star Wars always blows Star Trek away when it comes to the costumes and to the overall set, portions of the set. I mean, Star Trek does a great job of trying to be more futuristic and show that it's a lot like now. But as far as that element alone, like the Star Wars universe is just, to me, a little bit richer, and it always has been since I was a kid.
Well, and I think you're right there. And when you talk about both films, you also have to look at it. Star Trek's more science based,
right,
and Star Wars is more mythology based. Absolutely,
right, fantasy.
More fantasy. And I think once you make that distinction, you can look at both films as they are.
Right, because Star Trek is trying to kind of extrapolate on, actual, possible things, whereas Empire Strikes Back is just like wide open. We can do anything we want here.
Right,
really.
Right.
This technology doesn't have to be based on anything that could exist. It doesn't matter.
Right. All right. Anything else you guys want to add to overall?
I just want to say how cool Darth Vader is. He's awesome.
He's awesome. Yeah, he is.
It's like, okay, Vader is like, reaching out to Luke to join him in evil and rule the galaxy and overthrow the Empire. And it just really strikes me how, he blows up Alderaan, and that's just like rote villainy. But, to lavish so much attention on corrupting just one single soul of his son is just... It's heavy. I love that.
Are we certain that the Empire are the bad guys, though? I mean, weren't they really just trying to establish like a unified monetary system across the galaxy to make it easier for transactions? I mean, if they had PayPal, none of this would have happened.
The space euro?
Bitcoin. I think it was Bitcoin. If they had Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. But isn't ISIS trying to do the same thing?
Well,
on Archer.
No, not
ISIS,
Archer.
like in the middle
ISIS. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they're all trying to establish, infrastructure, but it's how you go about it, I think, makes a difference.
It's funny you bring that up, Tom, because Amanda bought me an ISIS shirt from Archer.
Oh, God, no.
And like a month later, the whole ISIS thing blew open in the news. I'm like, I can never wear this shirt again. Like I've worn it
to the airport.
I've worn it around the house.
Yeah, at the airport.
Yeah, I've worn it around the house. No, I won't take it to the airport because I actually wore a shirt when I was going out for a shoot, and I had to fly, and it said I shoot people for a living, and it has the film reel in the back.
Oh, no.
Well, the film reel has kind of faded a little bit, so it just says I shoot people for a living. I got a lot of looks, not a cavity search, but a lot of looks.
Oh, yeah, okay. So you didn't get stopped or anything?
Yeah, better luck next time. I'll wear my ISIS shirt so I can get that body cavity search. But yeah, Vader is, this is Vader's movie. This is when you get everything starts falling together. But as far as being the bad guys, yeah, they're the bad guys, but I don't want to say they mean well, but they're just wanting to restore order. They want order instead of chaos.
Yeah, where
Khan wants chaos. But, Vader just wants order. That's why he wants Luke with him, to restore order to the universe. And when it all comes down to it, it's that. So,
yeah, every good villain has their own motivation, and they're the hero in their own story.
Exactly.
And that's how it's a good villain.
They're not out to wipe all life from a planet like Khan.
Mm-hmm.
He just wants to restore order by any means necessary.
Well, he does blow up Alderaan, so that's
true.
That's a little indicative of his
Vader
villainous
didn't,
nature. But
Vader didn't do
So
that.
gauche.
Vader didn't do that though, did he? I thought that was
technically Tarkin did that.
Tarkin.
But...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that dang it, I had a point I wanted to say and it was funny, but never mind.
I have a quick question for you guys.
Yeah.
We have the benefit of hindsight now, but if someone came to you and pitched you an idea that, like Star Wars, where, okay, there's going to be this guy, and he's going to be wearing all black, and he's going to have, like, this black helmet on, and he's going to be going after his son, who has this, mystical power that he can control and is really powerful with, and they're going to be in outer space, and they're going to ride on the backs of these things called tauntaun. Like if somebody came to you with this idea, what would you think?
Well, being a
I would be like, you're insane.
Being a nerd, I would be like, yeah, let's do it.
Let's make it.
But
my first thought would be like, this will never work.
I mean, looking at it, for me, there's a lot of historical references in how the Empire is brought together.
Sure.
And just looking at Vader, the stormtrooper. I mean, hell, they're called stormtroopers, for Christ's sake.
Right.
But hindsight, I don't know, because that's kind of difficult.
I know, because we know how successful it is now. It's hard.
I mean,
it's hard to look back and go, "Oh yeah, I would scoff at the idea of such an awesome villain as Darth Vader."
It's not even the fact that it's successful. It's the fact that we love the films. It's the fact that we all grew up watching these films. So it's kind of ingrained in us. We are kind of the Star Wars generation.
For sure, absolutely.
Every generation's the Star Wars generation now. Disney's going to make sure of that.
Oh well,
yeah,
of course,
no doubt, forever.
Four movies in 3 years. Oh my god!
Now, just real quick, and overall, I was trying to do a lot of research to see, people's opinions, Star Trek or Empire versus Wrath of Khan, this, that, and the other. And I ran across an article on Gizmodo. I won't pull it up and read the entire thing, but they essentially said, what if the Empire was to go to war with the Federation? And essentially they gave the bump to the Federation because of the technology. Yeah, like they broke it down. And if you guys, if you or the listeners want to look it up, it's on Gizmodo, and it's actually a really fun read if you are into nerdy stuff like I am.
Is this an article or is it?
It's an article. It's an actual article.
I remember reading a comment thread one time between whether the Federation or the Empire would win, and I mean, this was insane how detailed these guys were getting about the technology and the motives and stuff. I mean, this is just in a comment thread.
Yeah,
I think that would be a good bit of fan fiction, maybe.
Yeah, this one is titled "Who Would Win in an All-Out Battle: Star Wars or Star Trek?" And it's let's see, who's it written by? Ram Loken. So yeah, it's on Gizmodo. Just search Star Wars versus Star Trek, and it breaks it down. Like the only thing that the Empire has on its side is sheer numbers. They said.
Not even the Force.
No, just because.
Just
because it's just Vader. If you're going with just the films,
sure.
it's only
one
Vader.
guy with the Force, right?
Yeah. So, it's kind of an interesting read. Someone might get a kick out of it. So let's, you want to add anything to overall, or should we move to voting?
Vote.
All right.
Vote.
Kent?
So this is overall movie, which is better? Which do you like better? I got to go Empire. I mean, I was raised on that shiz, I'm a Star Wars guy from early on. I came to Star Trek later, and I love it, but Empire rules.
All right. Tom?
Yeah, Empire Strikes Back is way better.
Gabe?
Yeah, I will watch Empire Strikes Back over and over again, probably.
And I'm not even going to ask Sam. because I already know the answer.
So Star Trek it is.
Yes.
You're just putting that down.
Yeah.
So 3-1.
All right. Let's, while the monkey's doing his thing, let's go ahead and move on to our recommendations for this month. And we'll start it off with Tom.
Yeah, nobody can steal mine. Awesome. I would like to nominate a sequel that was nearly as good as the original film, and it also stars William Shatner. That would be Airplane 2, the sequel.
Hold on.
Yes!
I got a little bit of trivia for that.
Flashing and beeping.
What?
I said I've got a little trivia for that. Sam just was quoting it when he was getting enraged by that machine, and he was wanting them to figure out what it was. That machine was actually used in Wrath of Khan. You can you can see it on the space station. So sorry, go ahead, Tom.
So, yeah, I think Airplane 2 is, I think it's one of those, sequel comedy is very hard to do. And God bless the Zuckers for knowing, look, just give us the same jokes you gave us before, with just a little bit of change, move some of it to a courtroom, we'll be happy. And throw in William Shatner, and you have the makings of a really awesome sequel. And I know some people kind of look down on Airplane 2 because they see it's just a rehash, but quite frankly, Airplane is so great, you can rehash that and refry it as many times you want. It's so delicious. And I love Airplane 2 and the fact that they get so many of the original cast members back. Airplane and Airplane 2 are two very solid parts, as much as Empire probably, of my childhood, that my brothers and I still crack jokes from Airplane all the time. You know, Striker, and then he punches her. It's great stuff. Because I don't know, hitting women is funny. I really should.
Yeah. You should maybe stop now.
You should stick with books, Tom.
That's actually probably. I had with books. Hey, you know what? 2 books came up in conversation while we were talking just now. The
Yes.
two possibilities came up, but I bit my lip. So you're welcome. Anyway, Airplane 2, the sequel, it's fantastic. It's no longer on Netflix, so you're going to have to go to Amazon and buy the Blu-ray so you can see it in all its high-definition glory.
All right, thanks, Tom.
Yep.
Gabe.
Well, I'm gonna have to go with the Sci-Fi movie. It's a newer one that has some really cool visual effects, and I really thought had an interesting story and concept. I'm gonna go with District 9. I really enjoyed that movie. Now I feel like I've been very excited about some of the director's subsequent projects, but I've been a little bit disappointed. They really haven't lived up. I have not yet seen Chappie, though. Have any of you guys seen Chappie?
I want to. I haven't.
I kind of want to.
I've heard really bad things.
And I'm a little bit afraid of that because
it's not too good, but that's about it.
The pacing.
Chafing.
Really
bad chafing. Really bad.
It's even better that Gabe didn't hear.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little Chappie.
Oh, Gold Bond will fix that right up.
Yeah.
You said monkey butt.
That's my recommendation.
Monkey butt.
I think he really hit it out of the park with his first effort with District 9. The visual effects are stunning, and I think they're used appropriately. We talked about how visual effects are used in these 2 movies, and I read an article recently about how CGI is getting worse, and how it's kind of taking over. They're spending too much time and money on it, and they're, and I think movies like this prove. And you guys were talking about the new Star Wars movies, how they're going to more practical effects, maybe more models and those kinds of things. And another movie that I'll mention really quick, which I haven't seen yet, but I'm really excited about seeing, is the new Mad Max.
Oh, damn it!
But I'm not. You can mention that as your recommendation. I haven't seen it yet. I can't recommend it.
All right.
But one of the things about that I think it's a good mixture of the two. It seems like there's a lot of cool practical visual effects, but then they enhance it where they need to, or augment it where maybe it wasn't safe to do it in a practical sense. And I feel like that District 9 hits that balance quite well. Mm-hmm. On a little bit lower budget than some of these big, CGI fest type movies. So If you haven't seen District 9, I would highly recommend going out and checking it out.
That's a good recommendation. We actually did his second film, I believe, which was Elysium. That was Neil Blomkamp, right?
Yeah. And that's one where it's like I'm a little bit afraid that he's kind of in love with the visual effects, and that they take over for the story. That the visual effects are really awesome in these movies. It's like, that is really cool.
Yeah.
But then there's a lack of character development and story there, and that kind of concerns me a little bit.
Well, I think you bring up a good point. You guys were hinting on it just real quick about visual effects versus more versus practical effects. Something there, and I agree with you guys. It gets a little distracting. You kind of. I think there's something missing a lot for the actors as well. I've watched, I've watched the Sin City movie, which was all done green screen. 300, and sometimes you can't get away with building the sets, and you have to go kind of the cheaper route, which is green screen and that. But I love it when people can do practical effects. And I think it adds so much more to the film just knowing that thing was actually built. Like the Empire Strikes Back, another piece of trivia that I had. I didn't even do trivia, hell, about the camera. There was an actual camera for Star Trek II that has the Guinness World Record for the highest frame rate for a film. And it was ILM. They made the special camera, shot, I want to say 2000, no, what was, I'll look it up here, but essentially it had a prism on it and everything for the final explosion when the Reliant blows up with the Genesis device. Sorry, that's a good recommendation from Gabe. Let's move on to Sam.
You see, your stupid minds, stupid.
Well, I would say that was a little clip there from, of course, Plan 9 from Outer Space, which is not my recommendation, but I was thinking a lot about it today. Definitely a fun film. I'm going to be recommending a Netflix original series. I think they've had tremendous success in the last few years, bringing different types of material to a different type of consumer and a different way to kind of consume a television series. I've been watching Grace and Frankie, which stars Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin as two women that are forced to reinvent their lives. It also stars Sam Waterston and Martin Sheen, and they play they play Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin's siblings that have basically gone gay for each other or have been going gay over all these years. Not to really give too much away about that, but it's a wonderful cast. It's very interesting to see older characters and kind of follow their adventures, both in love and life. Everyone is a great pleasure to watch, and it's a really original series. It's called Grace and Frankie. It's a Netflix exclusive, and it's streaming right now.
Oh, thanks, Sam.
So that's a TV show, not a movie, right, Sam?
Yes.
Okay. Just checking.
But it's not. But
at least it's not a book.
Oh,
Right.
You're actually the third person that's recommended that to me in like the past, couple weeks. So I'll have to check it out.
And then, of course, Orange is the New Black comes back this weekend, so that's what I'll be watching mostly on Netflix. Real soon.
Here's the trivia I had. The Genesis sequence called for a long and massive explosion. ILM rented the Cow Palace in San Francisco for the effect. They covered the ceiling with a black cloth and placed the camera on the floor looking up at it. The explosion would occur directly above the camera, so the fallout would appear to rush directly towards the point of view. A special high-speed camera was constructed, which ran at 2,500 frames per second. One of its components was a spinning prism which bent the image onto the film as it rushed past, which increased exposure time without having to slow the frame rate. Whew, there you go. All right, Kent.
Hang on.
Uh-oh.
I had to let my dog out of the room
Let the
because
dog
my
out.
wife just came home and he was flipping out. Mine is kind of a double recommendation in that we went to the Flicks Brew House the other night, and I hadn't been there before. and did the whole experience. Had a great time. Had beers and stuff like that. Food during the movie, it's served right to you. You can pull your tray out. But we saw the movie Spy with Melissa McCarthy. That movie was hilarious, and I don't know if it was also because of the atmosphere that we're in at Flicks. I mean, the whole crowd was into it. Everyone was laughing, cheering, stuff like that. But we really had a great time at that, and it was hilarious. She is so foul-mouthed. It's amazing, some of this stuff past the censors.
And
but I guess a hard R will get you anywhere. So
doesn't she play her cover as a housewife from Iowa?
Yep, she's from Iowa. And it's actually, a little bit... It's a little bit on the nose. With the cat lady wigs, and they mentioned like something about Ames or something in there too.
Nice.
But it's great to see a movie. She has above the title billing, and it's great to see a movie starring a woman. In this day and age where women in Hollywood are getting all this attention or lack thereof, it's great to see a movie where a woman can get above the title billing and win the box office for the weekend. It beat Entourage and whatever else was out that weekend. So, very funny. Just a really good time at the Flicks Brewhouse.
All right. Thanks, K-Bot.
And that I'm not getting paid to say that either.
Just gift cards.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned earlier, 2,500 frames per second on the camera. Although it only took 1 second to film, it took up to 104 seconds on screen at 24 frames per second. So
sweet.
Sorry, as a camera nerd, that's pretty awesome. All right,
that's a lot of film.
That is a lot of film. So Gabe almost stole my recommendation without knowing it.
Oh, sorry.
All I have to say is, what a day! What a lovely day! It's funny. Kent brings up the fact that females in Hollywood aren't getting the screen time they deserve. And we were also talking about practical versus visual effects. And I have to say, there is a great deal of that in Mad Max Fury Road. Watching it just blew me away, knowing that all those cars were actual cars. Most of the stunts were done for real with the cars, with the actors. Visual effects were only used to help heighten it. It did not take away the fact. And so for me, I just enjoyed it that much more knowing that those cars were actually out there and they were actually shooting all this. And where do I even start? Charlize Theron plays Furiosa. And I know this is titled Mad Max, but he's more of a secondary character in this, and Furiosa is more the main character. And then watching those two work together, and it's great to see an action film where a woman is not the damsel in distress, where she can actually kick a lot of ass and doesn't really need the hero to help her out at all. And if you want to see more empowering of women, I guess, go see Mad Max. It is just brilliantly done. It's well directed, well acted, and I can't say enough good things about the pacing and the effects. So check out Mad Max Fury Road. Now, before we go on to find out who won, I want to ask you four guys a question. Which, I know some of you stated, but if this is your favorite Star Wars film, then pick your second favorite. But which is your favorite Star Wars film? And we'll start with Tom.
My favorite Star Wars film?
Yeah.
For the next 6 months, I'd have to say Empire. My hopes are really high. Empire is my favorite one, but I respect the first one so much because of the world that it created. And my favorite Star Wars thing to watch right now are the trailers for the new one. I just like 50, 60 times today. So I need a bath. I haven't taken one in several days, so Because I just keep watching it over again.
You may want to see a doctor.
Yeah.
Gabe?
I did, but he recommended I watch a couple Star Trek films, so fuck that guy.
Wow.
Gabe?
Yeah, well, I might have to be with Tom. The very first Star Wars movie was a very important movie in my life. When I saw that, I said to myself, I want to do that. I want to make movies because that was the coolest thing I've ever seen. So the very first Star Wars movie was very important to me. But as far as the whole series, I think Empire Strikes Back is probably one of the strongest ones. So and I kind of have high hopes for the new one too. So we'll see. But right now, I think I'm with Tom. Empire Strikes Back right now.
All right, Kent?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say Empire isn't my favorite movie because it's awesome. But I do want to give a shout out to A New Hope because being 6 years old in a little theater in Hampton, Iowa, and I went to the movie. I don't have specific memories of being in the movie and watching A New Hope, but I know I do have one of my earliest memories is being outside of the theater after the movie and running around the building like 3 times pretending I was an X-Wing fighter. And so for me, I kind of go back and forth because that's the movie that started it all off, and it was just such a point of joy as a little 6-year-old kid to be going to that movie. Yeah, it was really great.
All right, Sam.
Well, I think, believe it or not, the original Star Wars, A New Hope, is probably my favorite. Like, I love everything about Empire. I understand why it is kind of the touchstone picture for most Star Wars fans, but without the original Star Wars, now Episode 4, A New Hope, there wouldn't be anything. And there's just part of me that I know a lot of these, almost all the Star Wars films, I can almost quote them all by heart at this point after seeing them so many times and so many incarnations. But the original Star Wars, to me, has a little sparkle of magic that makes it my favorite.
All right, and this might come as a surprise to you guys, but mine, and I'm going to wait for the audible gasps, but Return of the Jedi. Just because that was the very first one I was able to see in the theater. I remember my dad and my brother taking me to see it. And for me, I think it's just that experience. That's one of the first films I ever remember going to see in a theater, and it happened to be Return of the Jedi. And I know it's got more Muppets in it, and it Carrie Fisher's all hopped up on cocaine, but I mean, I don't know why, but it's really ingrained in me. And Empire, yeah, that's almost tied with it. I mean, all 3 of them are almost up there on top, and it's really difficult. But Return of the Jedi just kind of hits it home for me for some reason. I can't quite put a finger on it. And I'm not going to ask maybe Sam or Tom what their favorite Star Trek movie is.
Bring it. I want to piss some people off. Do it.
All right. What's your guys' favorite Star Trek films, Tom?
J.J. Abrams, the new one. Fuck you guys.
Sam?
Yeah. What's the stupid one with the whales?
Star Trek 4. Star Trek 4.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. J.J. Abrams, sure.
All right. Gabe and Kent.
Together. Do we have to pick the same one?
No.
Yeah.
No.
So what do you think, Gabe? What should we go with?
I don't know. I kind of liked the people will probably gasp at this too. I kind of liked the new Into Darkness one.
What?
Was that bad? I don't know.
No,
I thought everybody hated it.
Was that?
I thought everybody hated it.
No,
I kind of liked it.
Oh, all right. Well, then I'll see it.
Personally, but you might not want to take my advice, Tom. I don't know.
Here's the question I have. Why do Star Trek fans why are they so upset when one of the Star Trek films is entertaining? I mean, Voyage Home, the whale one, it's entertaining and it's it's got its moments in it and it's actually pretty enjoyable. And the Star Trek, the J.J. Abrams ones, I mean, they're trying to like revitalize this franchise and get it going, and it's like, yeah, but normal people liked it, so it must not be very good. I'm like, stop being so snooty. We're trying to work with your franchise here and get you a broader audience. Well, but I mean, I don't know. Didn't
the Star Wars community do the same thing when Lucas did the prequels? I mean, I'm surprised Lucas didn't commit suicide after episode 1.
No. That was not about broadening the film's appeal. That was about filmmaking quality. Now, you go back and watch Phantom Menace, and it is atrocious. I mean, it is a badly put together movie with horrible acting and did they really think like trade negotiations was going to drive everybody to the box office? It's such bullcrap.
I agree with that, but it's still, I mean, we had a field day. Well, I shouldn't say I hate episode 1 with a passion, but I kind of see it as, I mean, with anything, Star Trek, Star Wars, what else have they been kind of rebooting, and people are like Godzilla, it's everything like that. There's always going to be haters. Haters are going to hate, Tom.
No, but this isn't like them taking a movie from the 80s like what they're doing with Big Trouble in Little China. And I mean, don't get me started on that bullshit trend, but this is about taking a franchise, an established decades-old franchise, and revitalizing it and trying to make something else out of it. And it's not, they're not trying to just retell a story. I mean, they're trying to continue a story that already exists. And I mean, fucking Point Break, did you see that shitty trailer?
No, I'm
my god.
Are they redoing Point Break?
They're doing Point Break. Oh my god. The trailer deserves its own Cinesmack episode. Oh my I'm gonna Cinesmack the people that made that movie. I bet there's no LA Guns on that soundtrack.
Just real quick. Wow, LA Guns. Just real quick, something that I've always gone with is go with the even number Star Trek movies. They're usually the better ones.
Yeah.
2, 4, 6, what is it? First Contact, and then Insurrection. No, not Insurrection. Nemesis, right? Yeah, I think that's the way it goes. So Kent, from a Trekker to a Trekker, what's your favorite Star Trek film?
J.J. Abrams was a lot of fun, but I like First Contact. I love The Next Generation. I just like that cast, and they always have fun. And that movie going back in time, bringing in the Borg, Picard losing his shit. Great movie. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I think for me, I would have to go to First Contact and then the first one in the J.J. Abrams. And it's kind of weird, but yeah, that's the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, let's move on to find out who won.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Your winner by decision is The Empire Strikes Back! Han!
All right, so
It's Disco Star Wars, baby.
Oh, yeah.
I think I had a 45 of this.
I had 46. And 28 seconds. Good. Okay.
Nice.
all right. Let's Tom, where can people find you on the web?
They can find me at CheshireMoonFilms.com and WeddingDayRewind.com. We're in the midst of wedding season. It's totally crazy. So it's awesome. Love doing it. Pretty awesome. I don't know. I mean, my studio's in Ames, so you can stop by, but I'm rarely here. So
all right.
Pretty busy.
Gabe.
You can find me on Facebook or at onegenomeshort.com.
Sam.
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook. My big project for the summer is the 48-hour film project. blows back into town at the end of July with screenings in August. You can find out full information at 48hourfilm.com/Des Moines.
Kent?
You can find me on Facebook. And also, hopefully, in the future, a buddy of mine and myself are writing a screenplay, and you might find us in the silver screen somewhere.
Awesome. Awesome sauce. Thanks again for joining us, Kent, by the way.
Thank you for having me. It was a blast.
I hope you had a good time. And let's see, my brain just shut off. Yeah, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter. You can find the studio at southsiderstudios.com. You can see all our films on YouTube, and you can find all the rest of the studio podcasts on iTunes. Just search Southsider Studios. And we would appreciate it if you could leave us a review on iTunes or whatever podcasting service you use. You can contact us at cinesmack@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Just search Cinesmack. And for July, Gabe is hosting, right?
Yes.
We go back to our teen years as Porky's takes on American Pie. For Gabe, Sam, Kent, Tom, myself, may the force be with us. And you have been and always shall be our friends. Thanks for listening, and go catch a flick.
Sorry, I couldn't find any Star Trek music to play under the end. I don't think anybody would know anyway. So.
How rude!
In the first corner they were. From 1980 it was. Directed by Irvin Kershner. Starring Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher. Star Wars. Strike back, the Empire did. In the second corner. Stardate 1982. Directed by Nicholas Meyer. Starring William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, and Ricardo Montalban. Star Trek II. The Wrath of Khan.
This has been a test of the Southsider Studios podcast system. This was only a test. If this were a true lack of entertainment, your head would explode. Go to iTunes and subscribe to our feed. Just search Southsider Studios.